bashful to ask any questions. I'm here. If the question is in Arabic, I will translate. Okay. I will present to you now Ms. Kristen Smith.
Good morning. How's everybody today? Good, good. We're very happy this morning. I also have Supervisory Officer Kathy Melton with me. She's from our office, and she'll be helping me this morning. The first thing that we're going to talk about is adjustment of status, and then after we're finished with that, and we've got lots of time for questions, we're going to talk about the unauthorized practice of immigration law, and how important it is that when you need immigration help that you go to the right people. So those are the two different things we're going to talk about. Do you want to do this part? No, you want me to? Okay, we're going to talk about how people get green cards. And you can see on the screens, a green card, everyone knows what that is? A lawful permanent resident card. Okay. We all know how difficult they can be to get, but they are green cards. We're going to talk about immigrant visas, which is a visa that allows someone to come to the United States permanently. We'll talk a little bit about non-immigrant visas. A non-immigrant visa is a visa that allows someone to come to the United States temporarily. We're going to talk about what a petitioner is, because that's a very important part of the adjustment of status process. We'll also talk about what a beneficiary is. Okay. Yeah. Yes, and I will try to speak more slowly. I'm sorry. I'm a rapid speaker. There are basically two ways to get a green card, two different ways. One way is to obtain an immigrant visa at an American embassy outside of the United States. I'm sure many of you immigrated that way. You had someone that petitioned for you, probably a relative or a company that petitioned for you to immigrate to the United States, and you obtain your visa outside of the United States at an American embassy. All right? The second way to become a permanent resident or to get a green card is to adjust your status in the United States. And you do that by coming into the United States as a non-immigrant and filing an application to get your green card. You still have to have a petitioner, someone that files the petition for you, whether it's a relative that's a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, or it could be a company, either one of those two. Either way, you get your green card. Okay, when you immigrate, again, you're outside of the United States. The process is completed totally outside of the United States. You enter with your visa, and you get your green card. Adjusting your status, you're inside the United States. Again, you've got a non-immigrant visa that you've entered with, and you go just by a matter of law, by a matter of an application, you go from a non-immigrant to an immigrant. And the example that's given here is a visitor. Someone comes in as a visitor for pleasure. They have a B2 visa. They're allowed to enter for 6 months, but perhaps they marry a United States citizen. That U.S. citizen files a petition for them, and then the applicant files an application to adjust their status, and they get their green card while they're in the United States, versus having to come in with an immigrant visa. Those are the two different ways that you can get a green card. And it's the adjustment of status process that we really want to talk about today. Okay? There are two basic different types of petitioners other than a U.S. company. A U.S. company can be considered a petitioner for immigration purposes, but we're talking about family members today. The two different types of family members that can petition for an alien are they're a U.S. citizen. A U.S. citizen petitioner can petition for their parents, their spouses, their children, their unmarried sons and daughters, and their brothers and sisters. Those are the different categories a U.S. citizen can petition for. Again, that's parents, spouses, children, married and unmarried sons and daughters, and brothers and sisters. A U.S. citizen can petition for. Did I get all of them? Okay. The preference category, let's go back just 1 second to the previous screen. A preference category is a a little bit different. Rather than it being a U.S. citizen petitioner, it's generally a permanent resident petitioner. There are some exceptions to that, but a resident can also petition for their spouses and their unmarried children. That's what a lawful permanent resident can petition for. Okay. Again, who is an immediate relative? Spouses of U.S. citizens, parents, children who are under 21 and not married. Those are immediate relatives. An immediate relative means they do not have to wait for a visa to become available. There's no limit on the numbers. There's as many visas available as there are those relationships. As many spouses of U.S. citizens as exist, that's how many visas are available. Whereas with the preference categories that we're going to talk about next, it's a little bit different. These are the preference categories. You've got unmarried sons and daughters of U.S. over 21. A child that's under 21 is considered an immediate relative. But if they're over 21, they become a preference category, and then there are less visas available. Also, spouses and children of lawful permanent residents is another preference category. Visas are not immediately available for spouses of permanent residents like they are for U.S. citizens. Unmarried sons and daughters of permanent residents, married sons and daughters of U.S. citizens, preference, and brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens. Brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens, it takes years and years to immigrate because of the number of visas that are available. All of these categories have to wait for a visa to become available. Again, totally different than immediate relatives of U.S. citizens. Okay. Anyone familiar with the Visa Bulletin? No, the Visa Bulletin is issued by the State Department. And basically that determines how many visas are available each year for each of these categories. Now, the immediate relatives are not going to be on the bulletin because the visas are available. We don't have to wait. We don't have to count those visas. But the Visa Bulletin comes out every month, updated by the State Department, and it is the State Department, not Department of Homeland Security, State Department, that determines how many visas will be available each month. For anyone that has family members that are trying to immigrate, if they're preference categories, it's important to stay on top of the Visa Bulletin to know when a visa is going to be available for your family. Okay? The priority date is determined by the date the United States needs a petition. Whether it's an employment category or it's for a family member, that petition has to be filed. The priority date is determined by the date of filing of the petition. And then that's what becomes important when looking at the Visa Bulletin to see if a visa is going to become available. Thank you. This is an example of a Visa Bulletin. If you look at the category that's circled, spouses and children of a lawful permanent resident, again, that's a preference category. You can see that someone from Mexico who filed their petition in 2002, and this bulletin's a little bit old, but they would have had to have waited 6 years to actually get their visa. If you look down at the fourth preference, those are brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens. Remember I said it takes a long time for brothers and sisters. They wait 15, 20 years sometimes for a visa to become available, depending on the country that they're from. This is an example of an approval notice of an I-130, and again, that's the petition. I'm sorry? Go ahead and ask. Well, ask while it's fresh. Right, I understand that. That would take literally Congress to take action. It would have to come from Congress. As a group, you can contact your your Congress members, certainly you can lobby for something like that. But it would literally take an act of Congress for that to change, because it is statutory, and there are regulations that determine the number of visas each year. That is determined every year, and it would literally take something from Congress to change that. Yes? Well, you can't petition for your mother unless you're an American citizen. Right, right. So there's really nothing at this point that you can do for your mother. If you become an American citizen, you can file a petition for her. But until then, what you could do is file for an extension of stay so that she could stay longer legally. But there's no provision in the law for you to petition for her at this point. All right. I understand, that what's happening in Egypt, and I know it's of great concern to everyone in this room. But unfortunately, there's no change in the law because of that, at least not at this point. So we have to work with the laws that exist today. And today, there's no provision for you to petition for your mother, not permanently. Yes? Mm-hmm. Could be anyone that's willing to listen to your concerns. Well, USCIS can only deal with the laws that exist today. And the laws that we have, the Immigration and Nationality Act and the Code of Federal Regulations that we use, those are given to us by Congress. And so we can't change what Congress has given us. It's Congress that has to change them first. And then we implement them. Then we work with what they give us. That's certainly something that you could try. That request would go to the Department of State versus we're U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. We're part of the Department of Homeland Security. So your request would go to the Department of State. I would say call them. I have a phone number for them, which I can give to Ms. Salama later. I don't have it with me, but I will certainly give it to her. But it's the Department of State that would make those decisions. Okay? You can apply for refugee status in Egypt.
That will take 10 years. Even if they determine that, yes, we can have people to come out of Egypt to be refugees like we have in Iraq, it takes 10 years for them to start to come here. Also, they cannot be in Egypt and apply for asylum. They have to be outside Egypt, stay outside Egypt, and apply for asylum or refugee status. They can be in Syria. We have a State Department right now in Jordan and in Syria. But Syria have trouble right now. So I would say they go to Jordan and apply there for asylum. If they get a visa and come here, and then we can file asylum, yes, we can do that. I can help them with that. The asylum